What a weekend it was for the Orioles in Houston. Brandon Young flirts with perfection, and Dylan Beavers and Samuel Basallo both make their major league debuts in an O series win over the Astros. I'll recap it all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Monday, August 18th, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles series victory over the Houston Astros this weekend at Daikin Park, taking 2 of 3 from the Stros and having a whole lot of cool stuff happen this weekend. First, we'll start with Friday's win. Brandon Young coming oh so close to the Orioles' first perfect game in franchise history. Then we'll chat about what was a very weird and wild 12-inning loss on Saturday, how close the Orioles came to actually sweeping this series, and of course, the debut of Dylan Beavers. And then finally, an Orioles offensive explosion, a great Kremer start, and the debut of Samuel Basallo as well in the win on Sunday. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner, so visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now. So it's an Orioles series win over the Astros. We begin with Friday night in Houston. The O's were coming off a series clinching win Thursday afternoon, taking 2 out of 3 from the Mariners, which helped out the Astros. Those two are in a battle right now atop the AL West. And the Orioles said, you know what? Sorry, Mariners, for beating you, but maybe we'll help you this weekend as we go to Houston. And that is what they did, taking 2 out of 3. And it began on Friday night. Final score from the first game of this series, Orioles 7 and the Astros nothing. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from this game. And the first thing, of course, you need to know with the baseball world's eyes on this game is that Brandon Young was nearly perfect in this one for the Orioles. Ended up throwing 7 2/3 perfect innings on the road against the Astros. It was just incredible to watch. The bid ended just 4 outs away from the Orioles' first ever perfect game in franchise history. And of course, it was Ramon Urias, whose infield single with 2 outs in the 8th broke it up. Of course, the Orioles trading Urias to the Astros at this year's trade deadline. Now, I saw a lot of questions about how is that not an error? How is that a hit? It was a little dribbler to up the third baseline. Young goes over, barehands it, makes an off-balance throw, throws it by Ryan Mountcastle at first base. Ball gets towards the screen, and Urias goes into second. Now, it was ruled a single, and then the throwing error allowing Urias to get to second base. It's possible that if Young kind of fields it, sets his feet, and makes a strong, accurate throw over to first, certainly a chance to get Urias. But the way the play rolled out and how slowly it was hit, it is not oh yeah, he would have definitely had him had he made a strong throw. It is, he would have had a chance to get him. And that is really the difference for an official scorer on if you're calling that play an error or a hit. If you just say, again, he had a chance to get him, that's a hit if the play is not made. Thousands of plays like that have happened in the majors, and basically all of them have been ruled hits. That was the correct scoring decision. Unfortunate for Brandon Young to have it end there with an infield single from Ramon Urias, who does not have any speed, as we Orioles fans know, but just really a tough play to make. I saw a little bit of, he should have let it go. Jordan Westburg was charging in. He would have made the play. Maybe he had a slightly better chance to make it, but if Westburg gets it, that's the ball's on the ground for even longer because it takes Westburg longer to get there than it did for Young coming off the mound, just kind of the depth where the hit was. You just never know. You really just never know. But either way, Young settles back in, gets a strikeout to finish off 8 strong scoreless innings with just that 1 hit allowed. He struck out 6. Of course, he didn't walk anybody on 93 pitches. And I'm sure some people wanted Young to come back out for the 9th, try to complete a shutout. He was only at 93 pitches, but he's had his struggles this year. He gave up the perfect game, and he ended his outing with that big strikeout to finish the 8th. Perfect time to take him out of the game on a high note. No need for him to get into trouble in the 9th, have to go to the bullpen. You ended on a good note. And just, if you're wondering, Connor, how did Brandon Young, with his 6+ ERA on the season, come 4 outs away from a perfect game against the first place Houston Astros on the road? The answer is 2 things. Number 1 is he pitched a lot more like the Brandon Young we saw in the minor leagues. He pitched a lot more like the guy we saw win Jim Palmer Orioles minor league pitcher of the year in 2024, the guy that dominated AAA, the guy that got himself added to the 40-man roster this offseason. That's the Brandon Young we saw. Throwing a lot of strikes, not walking anybody. No walks in this game for just the 3rd time this season. Only had 3 3-ball counts in this game. And listen, like, he didn't walk anybody in AAA last year. This year, he spent some time in AAA this year as well. Only a 4% walk rate in Norfolk for Young this year. It's up to a 9% walk rate in the bigger leagues. Now, 9% walk rate's a little above average. It's not something crazy terrible, but it's more than doubling your walk rate getting to the big leagues. That'll tend to hurt you, and it has hurt Brandon Young a lot of times this season because he was a strike thrower in the minor leagues. Number 1 thing on his scouting report, he is a strike thrower, and he just has not done that. And the funny thing is, his in-zone rate was only 40% on Friday night's start, and that's pretty low, especially for Brandon Young. He's been 53% on the year. But when you get ahead in counts a lot, you can do that. He frequently got it to 0-2 or 1-2 in the count very quickly against Astros hitters, and then was getting them the chase out of the zone. So although 60% of his pitches were out of the zone, he was getting more chase than maybe he's gotten in his big league career. 16 of the 24 outs that Young recorded in this game came on pitches that were outside of the strike zone. So either swings and misses, chasing out of the zone, or guys swinging at pitches and making contact out of the zone. And as we know, it's a lot harder to hit the ball hard. It's a lot harder to get hits, get extra base hits when you make contact with pitches outside the strike zone. So, soft grounders and pop-ups and lazy fly balls happen a lot. And that is what Young got. With a zone rate down, but a chase rate up, that can sometimes work even better. Now, number 2 of 2 on why he was able to do this and how he was able to do this, there was a new pitch in there for Brandon Young. It was subtle, but it was different. And I talked about it after Young's last start. It was probably his worst one in the big league. Saturday against the Athletics, he allowed 6 earned runs and lasted only 3 innings in that game. And I talked about how he was throwing his cutter a whole bunch. His cutter was kind of his main, righty on righty breaking ball coming up through the minor leagues. He threw it a lot when he first debuted early this season. It was bad. It got crushed. He went back to the minors. He kind of ditched his cutter. The usage went from 20% down to about 5%. And he was throwing, more splitters and more changeups and more curveballs to go along with his fastball when he came back. But then over the last few starts, the cutter started to creep its way back up to 15, 20, 25% usage. And he threw it a whole bunch when he got killed by the A's on Sunday. The pitch is his worst pitch results-wise, and by pure stuff, it's also by far his worst offering by Stuff Plus. Those are 2 things that should to tell you, which they kind of did to Young earlier this year. Stop throwing that cutter and replace it with something else. And what I had talked about is 2 things. 1, maybe he adds a sinker to get a little more depth against righties. But more likely, if he wants a pitch that's moving away from right-handers and it's a breaking ball, just turn your cutter into a slider. That's an even easier fix than adding a whole new pitch and a sinker, is just adjusting your cutter to make it more like a slider. Well, StatCast shows that Brandon Young threw 25 cutters Friday night in Houston, which would have been his number 2 most used pitch behind the fastball. But if you break down the data, that cutter he threw, the velocity was down over 2 miles an hour. It had 2 inches more vertical break. It had 1 inch more horizontal break. Those are the differences between a guy throwing a hard slider and throwing a cutter. And when the media talked to Brandon Young and his catcher that night, Adley Rutschman, after the game, they both confirmed, that was StatCast was wrong trying to pick it up. That was a hard slider and not a cutter, a different pitch that Young was throwing. He clearly saw, and Drew French and the pitching coaches saw, there was an adjustment needed to be made. He needed to, whether it was fixing the grip of his cutter or just throwing a completely different pitch, he threw it. And he didn't command it great. It was only in the zone 20% of the time. But when guys hit it, they didn't destroy it like they used to do with the cutter. A lot more soft contact against the new slider. Maybe that's the pitch that takes him to the next level. Now, there's no guaranteeing that throwing 7 2/3 perfect innings takes Brandon Young to the next level. This could be a Philip Humber kind of perfect game run. Although Humber threw an actual perfect game for the White Sox and didn't hear much about him after that. But this is also a guy in Brandon Young who Friday night was his 11th big league start, right? He is 26, but it's his first season in the big leagues. There is still plenty of room to grow. And the fact that he was willing to make changes on the fly to add that slider and then was able to not just make the changes, but execute those changes with success, those are huge traits that are going to help him in his career. And it's funny, the timing of this, right? Because Kyle Bradish is going to be back, somewhere between Sunday and Tuesday of next week. He's going to make his season debut, right? He's got one more rehab start to make in AAA. And before Friday night, Brandon Young was the guy that made the most sense to just option to AAA to give his rotation spot to Bradish. I mean, Young's going to make still one more start before Bradish comes back, but that's a much tougher decision to make at this point. These are certainly good problems to have, but hey, you do get the extra roster spot and the extra pitcher coming on September 1st. You will be adding Tyler Wells and Albert Suarez to the mix soon as well, but maybe you go to a 6-man rotation in September because you have the extra pitcher. You can still have an 8-man regular bullpen with 6 starters. And maybe Young and Bradish will both have space in there, because if he's going to throw the ball like that, you got to reward him and keep him in the rotation at least for a little while longer. Second thing you need to know from Friday's win is that Yarmil Geraldo was just as disgusting out of the bullpen. Only reliever the Orioles used, comes into the bottom of the ninth in a 7-0 lead to close it off. And Geraldo was nasty. I mean, got 2 pop-ups and then struck out Jose Altuve in a 1-2-3 ninth. 3 whiffs overall, and his slider looked completely unhittable. Remember, Geraldo was one of the 2 pitchers I put in the don't trust category in Friday's episode when I did my first Orioles bullpen trust power rankings in a while. Make sure to go back and check that one out if you have not already. I think I'm moving Geraldo up into maybe trust after that outing Friday, and then especially after the outing he had on Saturday, which we'll get to in a bit. Third thing you need to know from Friday's win is that, hey, the Orioles offense did some stuff as well, and Kobe Mayo went yard off of Framber Valdez, hopefully Kobe Mayo's future teammate. Valdez is having another great year in the Astros rotation, will be a free agent for the first time this offseason. I think the Orioles should be all over trying to bring him to Baltimore. But Mayo just, crushing a baseball, solo homer in the 4th to break the scoreless tie against Valdez in this one. His bat speed on that swing was tracked at 85.6 miles an hour. The MLB leader is Giancarlo Stanton, who's around 80 miles per hour on average. Mayo has some extreme bat speed. That's where a lot of his power comes from. But hey, it was his 5th homer of the season. He has just about a 600 OPS in August. I would really love to see Mayo finish the season strong. That was a good swing on his way. Also had a double on Sunday, which was nice to see as well. Fourth thing you need to know from this one is that Dylan Carlson has gone from ice cold to red hot, and probably just in time not play so much now that Dylan Beavers is here, which we'll get to. But Friday night, Dylan Beavers was not here. So Carlson was in the lineup once again, and he had just recently ended an 0-for-35 stretch at the plate, which was the 3rd longest 0-for stretch by any Orioles hitter in team history. That ended on Tuesday with a kind of little dinky infield single, but whatever gets you out of a slump is nice. And since he got that single on Tuesday, he's now been red hot. Dylan Carlson, who singled in the 2nd on Friday and then kind of put the capper on this win, a 2-run opposite field homer in the 8th that put the Orioles up 7-0, just snuck it into the first row of the Crawford boxes down the left field line. Didn't even hit the ball hard. 94.5 mile per hour exit velocity off the bat. Remember, 95 miles per hour and up is a hard hit ball, but was able to push it out of there. Then had another big game on Saturday. Carlson had a triple and a 2-run homer that got the Orioles on the board in the 5th on Saturday. He's now 7 for 16 with a triple, 2 home runs, 2 ribbies, 2 walks, and 2 strikeouts since he ended the 0-for-35. Maybe he'll push for some more playing time. It's going to be tougher now with Beavers and Basallo on the team, but good to see him swinging it well once again. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 7-0 win over the Astros to open this series on Friday night is that it was really an all-around performance from the Orioles offense. All 9 Orioles starters in this game had at least 1 hit. Jordan Westberg had 2 hits and a walk. Ryan Mountcastle had a single and a double. Jeremiah Jackson had 2 hits and an RBI. Gunnar Henderson drove in 2 runs. Like, everybody was making their presence felt in this game. And the 9 hits that the Orioles got off of Framber Valdez, that was the 2nd most hits that Framber has allowed in a game all season. Like, the O's were kind of all over him in this game. And Valdez has now made 5 starts against the Orioles since 2022. And he's got a 4.83 ERA with also a bunch of unearned runs in those games against him as well. The O's have kind of had his number. And also, like the 7 runs the O's got on Friday, that was their most they had scored since the trade deadline, when they, of course, dealt away Arias and Cedric Mullins and Ryan O'Hearn and Ramon Laureano. They were not scoring runs at all. See them put up a 7 spot was pretty good on Friday. Unfortunately, on Saturday, while they did score 4 more runs, the offense just could not come up big. And it was a crazy back and forth affair, but the Orioles lost to the Astros in 12 innings on Saturday night. I'll tell you how it happened coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up, and college football isn't far behind. So whether you've got your eye on big-name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in the game. And Prize Picks, it's pretty simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. It's simple to play. I would generally take the more on Lamar Jackson, the more on Derrick Henry, and you're usually in a good spot if you do that. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. That is at Prize Picks. Run your game. So the Orioles got the win on Friday night, getting the incredible start from Brandon Young and big offensive display. Unfortunately, they came close, couldn't follow it up with a win on Saturday. Final score from that one in 12 innings in Houston is the Astros 5 and the Orioles 4. The Astros winning it in a walk-off in the bottom of the 12th inning. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from that one. And of course, the first thing you need to know is Dylan Beavers was called up and made his major league debut with the Orioles on Saturday night. Got the call on Saturday morning. Outfielder Greg Allen was DFA'd to make room on both the active and 40-man rosters for Dylan Beavers. And I talked about this multiple times over the past week or two, why the Orioles had such a bad outfield out there, running out combinations of Greg Allen and Jordan Adams and Ryan Noda and Dylan Carlson and Daniel Johnson. It wasn't looking great out there, but the O's were waiting until past that August 15th date to call up Dylan Beavers, because that makes it much easier to maintain his rookie eligibility for next year. Potentially, if he wins the Rookie of the Year award, the O's would get a draft pick around number 35. So they do have to still keep him under 130 ABs for the rest of the season. The days on the roster thing is fine because they waited until August 16th. If he averages about 3.5 plate appearances per game, that's about 3 at-bats per game. Have no idea why they do it in at-bats instead of plate appearances, but they do. So it's about 3 at-bats per game. If he plays every day, there's roughly 40 games left. That still gives him 120 at-bats if he plays every day. He'll probably sit against a couple of lefties, so it shouldn't be too huge of an issue to keep him under 130 to keep that eligibility. And, Colton Cowser is back too. Tyler O'Neill will come back at some point. The both of them will cut into his playing time a little bit as well. But who is Dylan Beavers? If you're not aware, 24-year-old left-handed hitting corner outfielder who's played a little bit of center, but is more comfortable in right or left. He was a compensation round pick, 33rd overall by the Orioles in the 2022 MLB draft out of Cal. Came in with a lot of good data, a lot of good production, but a really weird swing. He was very honest with teams, including the Orioles, that he needed a swing change, and he underwent that swing change. John Mioli did some great writing about all the changes Beavers was undergoing, and he had some good stats, but finally this year in AAA is when he fully broke out into the player the Orioles knew he could be. In AAA this season, over 400 plate appearances, he hit .304 with a .420 on base and a .515 slugging. 18 homers, a 16% walk rate to an 18% strikeout rate is incredible. A 152 WRC plus made him the second best qualified hitter in all of AAA this year. Only Pittsburgh Pirates 30-year-old journeyman infielder Nick Solak was better in AAA this season. It's a 40% hard hit rate, so nothing elite, but he makes quality contact with the baseball, gets the bat to the ball really well. He's got good barrel rates. He's got a low chase rate. He's got a good arm in the outfield. And Baseball America put him in their top 100, ranked him number 83 in terms of prospects in all of baseball in their latest update. And he got his first hit in this game as well, leading off the top of the 9th inning in a 4-4 game against one of the nastiest relievers in baseball in Brian Abreu. First pitch, 96-mile-per-hour fastball at the knees, ropes it into the right field corner for a leadoff double, hit it 99.9 miles per hour in terms of the exit velocity off the bat. It was just the 11th extra base hit allowed by Brian Abreu all season, and Beavers got it for his first hit. Unfortunately, the O's couldn't bring him home to take the lead in the top of the ninth, but I thought he looked comfortable. He got another hit in the game on Sunday as well, which was good to see. He got a walk in that one too. He looked comfortable in the field. He looked comfortable on the plate. And we should see him out there almost every day for the remainder of this season. Second thing you need to know from the Saturday loss is that Cade Povich was throwing some disgusting stuff up there. Now, Povich didn't start the game. He was the scheduled starter initially, then the Orioles decided to go with the opener. So Rico Garcia, in just his third appearance with the O's, was the opener, and it did work out. Rico Garcia went out there and threw a scoreless first inning against the Astros. Then they handed the ball over to Povich in the second. Now, if you're wondering, Connor, why are you using the opener? It's actually the second time the O's have done it with Povich this year. Well, the Astros have a lot of good righties at the top of their lineup. Like, their lineup starts with Carlos Correa, Jose Altuve, Yainer Diaz, all three good right-handed hitters. You don't want the lefty Povich to have to face them to start the game. You'd rather have a righty out there. And the way the lineup turns over, pitchers, especially Povich, their stats get a lot worse when they face an order the third time through. If you don't have him pitch the first and he comes in the second, when he's facing the order a third time through, he's generally not going to have to face the best guys, Correa, Altuve, Diaz at the top, a third time. He'll instead face the guys at the bottom of the order a third time. And it's a strategy the Rays employed a lot of times, and other teams have done it. This is one of the times where you want to do that. It seemingly worked out for Povich, for Garcia, and for the Orioles. And Povich did have some command issues early when he came in the second. He walked one batter to begin the second. He walked the first two batters in the fourth. All three of those runners came in to score, and that ended up being the only runs Povich allowed. It was very much like, hey, don't walk the leadoff guys, and you'll probably be fine. His final outing in relief as the bulk pitcher on Saturday was 5 innings of 3-run ball on 5 hits. He struck out 10. He walked 3 and threw 91 pitches. Only 4 hard hit balls by the Astros. A lot of contact on the ground by Houston against Povich in this one. And he tied a career high with the 10 strikeouts. His 18 total whiffs, that's the swings and misses, was a career high. Got 6 of them on the changeup, which was by far his best pitch. That changeup was nasty on Saturday night. And the changeup had a different movement profile than we've seen earlier this season. Remember, Povich added that new kick changeup in spring training. He may have gone away from that and gone back to his original changeup on Saturday because the movement was different, but the results were really, really good on that pitch. Thought the stuff was nasty. The command could be better, but it did get better as the game went on, which is certainly a good sign. And he's doing enough to keep his rotation spot. Again, we'll see what happens when Bradish and Wells come back, but Povich and Young are both pitching well right now. I really liked what I saw. And 10 Ks in 5 innings. Like, you'll take that from anybody. And that was a really good outing from Cade Povich. Third thing you need to know from Saturday is that Jackson Holliday had one of his bigger swings of the season. A 2-run homer in the 8th inning off Astros left-handed reliever Bennett Sousa. Tied the game at 4-4 as the O's were down 3-0 early, came all the way back to tie it up. And not just a big hit in the game to tie it in the 8th, but a big hit for Jackson Holliday, who had continued to struggle against lefties this year, slugging just .299 against left-handed pitchers coming into Saturday's game. And that homer was only his 8th extra base hit of the year against a southpaw. And also for Holliday, he has been hitting 111 in his career against breaking balls, sliders or curveballs against left-handers. That was his first career home run in the big leagues off a breaking ball from a lefty as Sousa hung a slider in the middle of the zone and Holliday stayed on it enough to rope it into the right field seats for a 2-run homer to tie the game. That was the Orioles offense in this game. Dylan Carlson crushed a 2-run homer in the 5th off of Astros starter Jason Alexander to make it a 3-2 game. And then Holliday had the 2-run shot in the 8th to tie it up, but that was all the Orioles could get offensively. Now, the fourth thing you need to know from Saturday's loss and extras is that the Orioles bullpen did all they could possibly do to keep the O's in this game, right? Garcia throws the scoreless inning as the opener. Povich gives him 5 innings of 3-run ball. Cade Stroud did give up a home run to Jose Altuve in the 7th that made it a 4-2 game, snapped a streak of 6 consecutive scoreless outings for Stroud out of the Oriole bullpen. He has been pitching really, really well, though. Then Yennier Cano threw a scoreless 8th. He looked good. He has not looked that good in a while, but he threw a new slider. It looked more like a sweeper. That slider that Cano threw, he got some strikeouts on it on Saturday night, had 7 more inches of horizontal break, that is right to left break, than his usual kind of short slider. He's clearly gripping that pitch differently, and it worked tremendously to put up a 0. Then I mentioned Yarmiel Geraldo had the good ninth on Friday. How about Geraldo coming in, 4-4 game, bottom of the ninth, strikes out Jacob Melton. Then he has to face Correa and Altuve and just casually gets them both out for a 1-2-3 inning to send it to extras. We talked about how much of this bullpen usage down the stretch will be development. I mean, Yarmiel Geraldo had big-time development in those back-to-back scoreless outings on Friday and Saturday. And then it was up to Dietrich Enns because the Orioles, they got the zombie runner on second, the top of the 10th, couldn't score him. So here comes Dietrich Enns, maybe the Orioles closer at this point, right? Got the save in the ninth inning on Thursday in the win over the Mariners, been pitching super well. He was unbelievable. Of course, zombie runner at second base in the 10th, he puts up a 0. Then the O's don't score in the 11th. Zombie runner is the winning run on second in the 11th. He puts up a 0 in the 11th as well. 2 scoreless innings for Dietrich Enns with that runner on second base. It was just absurd what he was able to do. He did walk 2, some of them on purpose. He struck out 3, got 5 whiffs on 7 swings on the changeup. Got huge help from Kobe Mayo, who made a great glove flip to the plate to throw out Ramon Arias to keep the game going. I am all the way in on Dietrich Enns. I know he's a 34-year-old journeyman, but he has shown some really, really good stuff, and he might just be sticking in this Oriole bullpen. And quite frankly, Keegan Aiken then came on for the 12th because, again, the Orioles didn't score in the top of the 12th, so here comes Aiken. And Aiken gave up the walk-off, but he should have escaped the 12th and sent it to the 13th and kept it tied. But the fifth and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 5-4 walk-off loss to the Astros in 12 innings on Saturday is that the Orioles, the pitching executed, the hitting and the defense just did not execute at all in extra innings. Really, it started in the 9th inning. Dylan Beavers had the leadoff double in the 9th. They couldn't get him home. Then in the 10th, you got the zombie runner on second. Holiday and Westberg strike out. You don't get a run. You get the zombie runner in the 11th. You get the runner to third with 1 out. Dylan Beavers lines into a double play. Luis Vasquez, the pinch runner, gets doubled off at third. Wasn't amazing base running, but it was also bad luck because it was the contact play. And it looked like that line drive to Arias at second actually was trapped and hit the ground, but instead Arias did, naked eye, it looked like it was a ground ball, but he actually did catch it in the air. So a tough break for Vasquez. And then in the 12th, they have Kobe Mayo try to bunt, a sack bunt to lead off the inning. That doesn't work. They go down 1-2-3 in the 12th and don't score. Ended up going 0 for 14 with runners in scoring position in this game on Saturday, which was a new low for the season. They were 0 for 13 in a 10-inning loss to the Blue Jays back on April 13th. Last time they were 0 for 14 with runners in scoring position, you got to go back to April 6th of last year. And it was bad, but the pitching they were throwing the ball so well that they were putting up zeros of their own. The game just kept continuing into extras. And then the bottom of the 12th happened. And yes, the 12-0 win on Sunday, which we'll get to, made me feel a little bit better about what happened in the 12th. But man, oh man, that is just a play where the Orioles just have to be better. So you set the scene. They start the 12th with Keegan Aiken out there. He intentionally walks Jose Altuve, gets a ground ball to Holiday where maybe he could have turned 2. Instead, he just throws to first to get Yainer Diaz. So it's second and third, 1 out. Of course, the winning run is at third base. They throw out another intentional walk, which is the smart move to load the bases with 1 out. Ramon Arias is at the plate. And Arias hits a chopper, kind of slow, but Jordan Westberg was played in at third base. Westberg fields the ball at third. If he throws home, you get the force out at home. Maybe you don't get the double play and the inning continues, but you get the second out and you don't allow the run to score. Instead, Westberg throws to second, trying to get the double play. The turn wasn't clean. The throw from Holiday wasn't clean. Arias might have beat it anyway, but he beats out the throw at first base, and it's a walk-off fielder's choice, and the Astros win it 5-4. In a vacuum, there is an argument for Westberg to throw the ball to second instead of throw it home there. Really for 2 reasons. One is, hey, we're in the 12th inning, backs against the wall. Let's just go for it all, try to get the double play and end this inning right now. And the reason why you think that, number 2, is we know Ramon Arias' speed very well. We were just teammates with him for 6 years. We know he does not get down the line well. I was played in. I think if we turn this perfectly, Arias has low speed. We can get the double play and end the inning. I understand that. I still think, even in that vacuum, you throw the ball home to make sure. I mean, they had plenty of time to throw it home and get the force out at the plate. You get the second out there. You maybe even have a chance to catch it at home, turn and throw to first and still get a double play. But at the very least, you get that out at home to make sure the Astros don't win the game right there. In a vacuum, there's an argument for what Westberg did. I would still throw it home. The issue was that play didn't happen in a vacuum. The wherewithal of the game situation was bad. And listen, the Orioles have made some errors, especially after the deadline. There's been some ugly baseball, even before the deadline. They were playing some really ugly baseball early in this season. Errors and base running miscommunications and whatever it may be, it's not good. But a lot of them have been physical errors. And I don't mind those as much, right? Like when Jeremiah Jackson dropped that ball in right field in Wrigley. It's frustrating. It led to the only run, led to a run for the Cubs, which ended up winning them the game. It's frustrating, but it's a physical error. Jackson was in the right spot. He just dropped it, and he's been playing better right field, but hitting the ball really well since then. What I can't stand is the mental errors, and they're going to happen. Kobe Mayo's going to make some, right? He's a rookie, playing more first base than he ever has. Samuel Basallo will probably make a mental error at catcher at some point. Now these up here. Dylan Beavers will probably make a mental error, right? Jeremiah Jackson will probably make a mental error. These things are going to happen. I know Jordan Westburg isn't a veteran, right? He's in just his third big league season here in 2025, but he's the cool, calm, and collected guy who, quote unquote, plays the game the right way, is the guy you trust the most out there at multiple different positions defensively. He is the last guy I would think to make this throw to second base because, again, it was not in a vacuum. The context of the situation was that due up after Ramon Arias there, who, again, if you just throw home, you get the out, it's bases loaded, 2 outs, you're going to face the next hitter. You would have faced a pitcher hitting. The Astros had used all 4 of their bench players already as pinch hitters earlier in the game. So their bench was cleaned out. And because they had pinch hit for their backup catcher, and their other catcher, I believe, was already out of the game, they needed to bring in Jose Altuve from DH. There was some sort of outfield adjustment where Jose Altuve had to come. He was the DH in the game. He had to enter the game in left field. So when you do that, we saw Brandon Hyde do it a lot as manager. You burn the DH. You no longer have the DH in the game, which means the pitcher goes into the batting order. And because the Astros were out of position players on the bench, they couldn't pinch hit for the pitcher. And so the Astros, Gary De Los Santos, who was pitching in this game, excuse me, that's Enyel De Los Santos, was pitching. He had just thrown a scoreless 11th and 12th. He was a former National League pitcher back before 2020. He actually had 6 career plate appearances. Now, he was 0 for 4, but he had 6 career plate appearances. He's probably the guy that the Astros would have had hit anyway. So you're going to have a relief pitcher who hasn't swung a bat in a game since 2019 in 6 years come up to hit with the bases loaded and 2 outs. And I know Keegan Aiken has struggled with his command recently, but I trust Keegan Aiken enough to get a relief pitcher out to send the game to the 13th if you just throw the ball home. If you're Westburg in that situation, you have to know that the pitcher is on deck, and you have to know that as long as we get Arias out in some way where the winning run doesn't score, even if we don't turn 2, we are going to get out of this inning unless Keegan Aiken throws 4 balls to the pitcher. You just have to know that. And the fact that he didn't is annoying and concerning. Now, Tony Mansolino said it after the game. It was a mistake by Westburg. He's been so good this year and in his career. He deserves some space to make a mistake. 100% agree with Tony on that one. Doesn't make it any less frustrating that it wasn't a physical error. I can take those. It was a serious mental error in a huge spot in the bottom of the 12th of a tie game. And it's not as big because the O's are out of it. These games don't matter as much, but you don't want that to carry over into other big spots. Hopefully he learns from that and he'll be good moving forward. And I know he will because it's Jordan Westburg, but that was just frustrating. And who knows, right? The Orioles, they may not win that game anyway, right? Like they weren't hitting at all. They were 0 for 14 with runners in scoring position. They probably don't score in the 13th and then get walked off on in the 13th and they just use another reliever. But you had a chance to stay in that game and they made such the wrong play. It was unbelievable, honestly, how wrong that decision was. But Jordan Westburg is the kind of guy who will roll through it. He will make the right play the next time, and hopefully he does when he is in that spot. It was just unfortunate to see the curse of the Ramon Arias. He breaks up the perfect game Friday. He gets the walk-off on Saturday, both on little infield dribblers showing more speed than, frankly, he ever showed in an Orioles uniform. But the Astros, even the series on Saturday, the O's said, we feel like we should have won Saturday. We are going to put the hammer down on Sunday. And that they did with a blowout win to take the series. And I'll tell you how they did and talk about maybe an even more exciting prospect debut coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day. a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Take a flyer on the MVP race. Is Lamar Jackson a flyer? No. But Derrick Henry might be. Crown your champion in August. It's the Ravens. Duh. So visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. And it's at FanDuel. Play your game. So we're going to have quite the long weekend recap episode. They usually go a little longer on Mondays anyway, because we got 3 games to talk about. That so much happened this weekend. You've got the Brandon Young almost perfect game. You've got the Dylan Beavers debut. You've got the incredible, offensive output from the Orioles Friday. You've got all the craziness that happened late on Saturday. And you've got a blowout win on Sunday that also had a Samuel Basallo debut. And that is where we will finish this up. Orioles 12, Astros nothing is the final score on Sunday as the O's take 2 out of 3. They win the series and get to 57 and 67 overall on the season. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from the Orioles Sunday victory. And the first thing, of course, you need to know is Samuel Basallo made his major league debut. The Orioles' number 1 overall prospect, a huge, lumbering 21-year-old left-handed hitting catcher who's played some first base as well, who's the number 3 prospect in all of baseball according to FanGraphs, was a 2021 international signing by Mike Elias, Cade Povich, and the Orioles out of Dominican Republic. Actually initially had an agreement to sign with the Yankees, but flipped to the Orioles, and the O's have been reaping the rewards since. Basallo got to AAA at the end of last season, kind of struggled, but again, he was 20 years old when he got there, just turned 21 earlier this week. And in AAA this year, he has been awesome. Almost as good as Dylan Beavers. 321 plate appearances for Basallo, hitting .270 with a .377 on base, .589 slugging, 23 home runs, 14% walk rate, 24% strikeout rate, and a .151 WRC+. I mentioned Dylan Beavers, second best hitter in AAA. Basallo right there in the top 5 as well. It's been an absurd 21% barrel rate and 57% hard hit rate with a 116 mile per hour maximum exit velocity in AAA. Those are absurd batted ball numbers. He's got a 70% hard hit rate against 4-seam fastballs in AAA. Probably a little bit too much swinging outside of the zone in his profile, but he makes good contact on those pitches as well. And there has been questions about his defensive ability catching. He throws the ball well, just the receiving and blocking have some questions, but it's gotten better, especially this season. And he's also shown that he is pretty good defensively out at first base as well when he plays that position too. So the Orioles called him up on Sunday. He's in the lineup, DHing and batting 6th. And not a lot of guys have had this happen. Hit by a pitch by Christian Javier in his first career plate appearance. He is the first Oriole and just the 29th big leaguer ever to get hit by a pitch in their first big league plate appearance. And then it looked like his first hit was going to be a 3-run homer in the 7th inning. But Astros right fielder Jesus Sanchez robs Basallo at that short Mickey Mouse right field wall at Dyken Park, leaping up and taking away a 3-run homer. Sanchez had done the same thing to Gunnar Henderson, robbing him of a grand slam back in the 3rd inning. What a day for Jesus Sanchez. But Basallo did finally get that first hit. He comes back up in the 8th inning with the bases loaded and 2 outs and drills a 2-run single into right center field to put the Orioles up 12-0. 101.2 off the bat. Got a fastball up in the zone and just turned on that thing. That is all the skills of Samuel Basallo. Also the almost homer. I mean, that was a cutter on the inside corner that he ripped out to right field. I'll talk more on tomorrow's episode about like how the Orioles are going to fit Basallo into the lineup most days down the stretch, but he's a special player. He is a special prospect. Really cool moment. The Orioles posted the video. The O's actually told Basallo's dad he was getting called up, and then had his dad call Samuel Basallo to inform him of the news. Basallo was crying. The family was celebrating. Just awesome, awesome moment to see him be, and this is the other big thing, the first Mike Elias and Cade Povich international signing to get all the way to the big leagues. And he, of course, has been their top guy. He's been a top 5 prospect in baseball, but what a cool moment that is for this entire organization and for him to get that hit as well. Second thing you need to know from Sunday's win is that the O's got another guy back in their lineup. Is Colton Cowser returned from the injured list. Cowser, who slammed into a wall back on August 6th in Philly, making a catch in left field. Immediately the next day went on the 7-day concussion IL, missed about 10 days, but then came back on Sunday. Outfielder Daniel Johnson and first baseman outfielder Ryan Noda were both optioned to AAA Norfolk to make room for Basallo and Cowser on the roster. And they also had to make a 40-man spot for Samuel Basallo. So Zach Eflin, who is out for the season, he'll be getting back surgery actually today. He was transferred to the 60-day injured list, which takes him off the 40-man roster for now, which opened up a spot for Basallo. And Cowser went 1 for 5 with a single. Nice to see him get a hit in his return. But more importantly, he got the start in center field defensively. Now, when Mullins and Laureano were traded at the deadline a couple of weeks ago, I thought for sure that Cowser was going to move over to center field full time. But Tony Mansolino said for the time being, he wanted Cowser to stay in left field, the position he knows the best, position where he maybe should have won a Gold Glove last year, so he could focus on his swinging and his batting because he was kind of in a slump. Well, now he comes back from the concussion, and, Daniel Johnson's no longer here, and Jordan Adams is no longer here, and Greg Allen is no longer here, and you got Dylan Beavers out there in the outfield. It just makes more sense to play Cowser in center because for now, that looks like that's going to be his position for the 2026 Orioles with Mullins gone. And, a guy like Enrique Bradfield Jr. is certainly not going to be ready for the big leagues next year. Cowser, who played center in college and has played it some in the big leagues so far, is probably going to shift over there. And he's kind of proved me wrong. I didn't think Cowser could play center field defensively, but last year he proved that he could do it. And I think it's going to be really important for him to get everyday reps in center field to get ready to most likely take over that position next season. Third thing you need to know from Sunday's 12-0 win is that the Orioles offense exploded, including 3 multi-hit games in this one. Now, the O's got a little bit of a break. Astros starting pitcher Christian Javier was making his second start back from Tommy John surgery. He went 5 innings of 2-run ball and 85 pitches in his first start last week, but the Astros pulled him after just 3 innings and 50 pitches with what they called illness. His fastball was down over 2 miles an hour, and the Orioles certainly took advantage of a bit of a tired Astros bullpen after all the innings they had to throw in the 12-inning game on Saturday. Jordan Westburg went 4 for 5 with a homer and 5 ribbies, had a 3-run shot in the 5th inning to make it a 5-0 game, kind of broke it open against the Astros bullpen. 5th career 4-hit game for Westburg, his 3rd of the season, and the 5 RBIs is a new career high. He had never had more than 3 ribbies in a big league game until Sunday. Jackson Holliday got on base 4 times, went 2 for 4, a couple of singles, 2 walks, an RBI, and 3 runs scored. First multi-hit game since July 30th for Holliday, and his 4th career game with multiple walks. Also the 4th time in his career and 2nd time this year he's been on base at least 4 times in a single game. And how about Jeremiah Jackson? Continuing to swing it well, starts in right field on Sunday, goes 3 for 5 with 3 singles, his 3rd multi-hit game of the year since he was called up for his debut right after the deadline, and his first career 3-hit game. Jeremiah Jackson, I mean, it's been fun to watch him swing the bat right now. He's hitting .333 with an .812 OPS since coming up to the O's. He's been a really, really nice addition after putting up those gaudy numbers in AAA this year. And for the O's, you'll take a 12-run game, 12 runs for them on Sunday. They were able to put together 14 hits. They had 5 walks in the game as well. It was awesome to see. Gunnar Henderson was the only starter without a hit, but he also had 2 walks and 2 ribbies, including, he should have had that grand slam. He got a sac fly in the 3rd, but he was robbed of that grand slam by Jesus Sanchez, and he was the only guy without a hit. They scored 23 runs, did the Orioles, in this series against the Astros. That's the same amount of runs, 23, as they scored in the first 10 games combined after the trade deadline when they traded away 4 of their hitters. The offense now, they're getting these young guys in there with Basallo, Beavers, and Jackson, and they are getting into a groove once again. 4th thing you need to know from Sunday's win is that, they did score 12 runs, but they also pitched a shutout. And that was because Dean Kremer was fantastic again on the mound for the Orioles. How about Dino going out there, 7 shutout innings, 3 hits, 7 Ks, just 1 walk, a career high 114 pitches for Dean Kremer, and just 4 hard hit balls by Astros hitters in this one. Just another wonderful start from Dean, who since May 1st now has a 3.16 ERA. Only once in that stretch has he failed to complete 5 innings. Got 7 starts of at least 7 innings, 7 straight starts now with at least 5 strikeouts as well. And those 114 pitches, most by an Oriole this year, most by an Oriole starter since July 4th of 2012, when Chris Tillman was called up to make his season debut for the 2012 Orioles and threw 125 pitches in a win in Seattle over the Mariners on that 4th of July. So it's been a while since we've seen an O's pitcher throw this many pitches, and it was because Kremer was just so good. 21 swings and misses for Kremer. 21 whiffs was a new career high and the most by any Orioles pitcher this season. Albert Suarez had 21 whiffs in a win over the Red Sox September 10th of last year. And the last Oriole to top 21 whiffs, Kyle Gibson, 23 whiffs, July 9th, 2023 against the Twins when he struck out 11 in that game. I mean, Dean Kremer's last start on Tuesday, he went 8 innings of 1-run ball against the Mariners. He was better on Sunday with those 7 shutout innings. He has just been so good. And he has also dominated the Astros in his career. Remember, his only career complete game shutout was against Houston 3 years ago. He's made 5 career starts against the Astros, 36 2/3 innings, 24 Ks, 6 runs, 24 hits, 6 runs, 26 Ks, and 7 walks. That's a 1.47 ERA in 5 starts against Houston. Remember, the Astros lineup has been really good pretty much since Dean Kremer debuted and started to face Houston. I mean, just with all the ups and downs of this Orioles offense, the rock of this rotation this year has been Dean Kremer. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 12-0 win over the Astros to clinch the series victory on Sunday is that the bullpen did not mess around after Kremer. Grant Wolfram, who we haven't seen in a while pitch for the O's, was awesome. I mean, nasty stuff, struck out the side in a scoreless 8th. He hasn't pitched in a lot of high leverage, but I'm a bigger believer in Wolfram than a guy like Dietrich Enns. I really think he has the stuff to be a big part of this Orioles bullpen next year. And then just a good outing for Corbin Martin. I understand he came into a 12-0 lead in the 9th inning, but his last couple outings have been horrible. Martin did allow 2 hits, but he also struck out 2, threw a scoreless 9th to secure the win, and just good for Martin, who has good stuff. It's been bad lately. Maybe this gets him back on the right track. Maybe a second straight series win against a playoff team, Mariners and now Astros, also gets the Orioles back on track, as there's a lot of cool stuff happening this weekend. And the coolest of them all, a series win for the O's over the Stros. And now they head to Boston for a very odd, not just that it's a 2-game series, those are pretty odd, but a Monday-Tuesday 2-game series. You rarely see a team have a day off on a Wednesday. But that is what the Orioles have after this super odd 2-game set in Boston. But that's what they're going to do this week. The Red Sox, 68-57, currently holding the second wild card spot, I believe, in the American League at the moment. 7:10 start on MASN tonight. Dustin May will go for the Red Sox, the 27-year-old right-hander who was traded from the Dodgers to Boston at the deadline. He's got a 4.67 ERA in 21 outings this year. But his last outing, 6 scoreless against the Astros. He's pitching well lately. And he will go up against the ace of the Orioles staff. Trevor Rogers takes the hill for his 12th start of the year. He's got a 1.43 ERA on the season. He has gone 8 innings, 6 innings, 7 innings, all of 1-run ball in his last 3 starts. And remember, this all started for Trevor Rogers at Fenway when he made his season debut all the way back on May 24th. And he went 6 1/3 scoreless in a win over the Red Sox. Would love to see that again from Rogers tonight. But that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for bearing with me. We're pushing 48 plus minutes on this one. I knew this was going to be a long episode. There was just too much cool stuff happening for the Orioles in Houston this weekend. If you liked all 48 minutes plus, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe here to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. Also, if you're a listener, whether it be Apple Podcasts or Spotify, follow the show, subscribe to the show, leave a 5-star rating and a review. Really helps us out. And if you have thoughts on the show, feedback, I'd love to hear it. You want to ask a mailbag question, you want to talk some ball, whatever it may be, you can always email me, lockedonorioles@gmail.com. I'll be back tomorrow recapping game 1 between the Orioles and the Red Sox and talking a little bit more about Samuel Basallo and how the O's are going to find a way to fit him into the lineup for the final 6 weeks of this season. That's coming up tomorrow. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.